the right side of the dress is the side with the sashes. So we're going to start now. There's one trick when you put the skirt to the top and you do right sides together. You have this placket, correct? You have two pieces. There's got to be one side that's folded. Typically, it's a right. For females, the button goes right over left. So I'm doing mine this way. So I'm going to pin. See how I have it folded? Under. I'm going to pin it. And right sides together. I'm going to start on the right side. And this placket needs to be at the beginning of the back where it seams down the center back. This is going to require a lot of pinning. Now, what I'm going to do is just remember to keep these separate. This is the right side of the dress. This is the lining side of the dress. This is the side seam. I'm going to go find, because there's a lot of skirt, I'm going to go find the side seam of the skirt, and I'm going to place it on the side seam of the dress. There's the side seam. Here's the side seam of the skirt. And I'm going to place it together, pin it. This is going to be our starting point. Now, I do remember when I was doing this, I mentioned that all of these gathered stitches have a tendency to hide where that center front notch is. I personally put a pin here because I know that I would be searching. So that's my center front notch. And then on the bodice, there's my center front notch. I'm gonna match the notches up once I find it. It's where there's a pin. I have my pin where my center front notch on the skirt is, my notch on the bodice, and I'm going to pin them together. Keep going around. Now we're back to the other on the other side seam. It's kind of a no-brainer. You know where the side seams are. There's my side seam. And there's my other side seam. I'm going to match those up and pin them. And typically, seam allowances should always be pressed towards the center back. Now, last but not least, we have to finish it at the center back. And on this side, my placket has been turned down and I've pinned it so that it's trying to get my hands out of the way so you can see what I did. It's hard to see with the print too, but it's turned back, and I'm going to put that here where the center back, you have a seam. I'm going to put that right up against that seam, pin it. Now, critical that you make sure one or the other side of this placket has been folded under and the other one is folded flat. So now all of our gathering stitches have been in place, but are they good enough? I still have some excess, so I'm going to have to pull them. And I need my strings. Were you guys able to online to access the other two videos that I made?
I'm looking now.
Okay. I'm going to make sure that I do this right. So this has to be turned back. but I couldn't access my basting stitches because the placket was in the way, so I unpinned it. I'm gonna pin it the back.
It's working. The video's working.
Okay. Yeah, they should be both working. There's two of them. The first one is about the sashes, and the other one was about progress we made on that to date as of Wednesday. So now, huh?
I only see the toddler stashing on
There's another. Oh, there's another one there. So now we have the gathers. Distribute them nicely across the entire back, and of course, pin them. It should be there. I saw it when I did it, that it was in there, in the modules. So I've pinned all the gathering stitches from the side seam here to the center back here. This side has the placket folded back. It's folded towards the inside of the skirt. So now they match in terms of width. And at some point we will sew that. We're going to move on to the center front. Right now I have a lot of excess, so I have to get my stitches and pull. A tip: when you're ready to pull these stitches, always pull the same stitches. You have the bobbin stitches and you have the needle stitches. Pick one or the other, because if you pull one and then pull the other, the nature of these machines is that it's a lock stitch. It will lock and you will never be able to pull your gather stitches after that. You'll have to start all over again. So I like to see what I'm doing, so I have it on this is on the bobbin side, my gathers, and that's where I'm going to pull them. So this is my center front where my pin is, and this is my side seam. And I'm gonna space out my gathers nice and neat and even, and start to pin. Now I'm also going to do something that I did before, but I'm going to do it again because I noticed that a lot of you have had some trouble with some of those seams. So I'm going to do those circular seams again. Okay. So in essence, I have half of my dress done. From the center back here to the side seam here, to my side seam, to my seam, here's my seam on the skirt, to the center front. Now from the center front to the other side of the back, I must continue. I do have the side seams pinned, so I'm going to start from there. And I'm going to pull some of my threads. The other thing is because of how long these threads are now, you can see it's really long. Everybody will have a tendency to cut them. Don't cut them because you need them to pull. And if you cut them and you don't have enough to pull, again, you're going to have to start over again. So try to refrain from doing that. Okay, so now I have my gathers. In. Try to distribute them equally so that you don't have a bunch of gathers bunched up in one section and then a section with no gathers. See, mine was bunched up here, so I spread it out and I pulled them over towards the side seam so that I have an equal distribution of gathers. Okay, so now I'm up to the side seam. And I'm almost finished. Last section is the back. It's a little loose because I have not pulled the threads yet fully. Always, always, always make sure that you only have one layer of the front. See, this is the other layer. Now you can see this is the right one because I'm sewing it to this face of this dress because you can see the sashes. My sashes are contrast, so that's easy to see. Now that I'm doing this side, if you recall, the other side of the back had the placket turned under towards the inside of the dress. This one is flat. If you fail to do to the placket what I just mentioned, your dress will never close properly. And there does not need to be gathers on the placket, obviously, because we didn't put a gathering stitch there to begin with. That needs to be flat. Now, the beauty of the way we do these gathers is that we do them so that there's one stitch at 1/4 of an inch basted, another one at 3/4 of an inch. Our seam now will be placed directly in the middle of those two. And because of the way we've pulled them, the gathers will be nicely and equally distributed. And it will look good when the dress is sewn together. So now that I have all my gathers pinned to the top, I'm going to sew at 1/2 of an inch. Starting, I like to sew it on top so that I can see the gathers. just in case it's a little bit bunched up or it's too shallow, then I could manipulate my gathers again. But when we started here at the center back, where that center back seam is. And this side has the placket flat. Okay, half of an inch as your seam lines. Oops, I'm gonna take this pin out. Now go slowly. Definitely you want to back tack at the beginning and then at the end. See, I can keep an eye on making my gathers equally distributed. I'm going to take out my pins as I go. I really don't want to break a needle so that I have to replace it at this point. And of course, without a doubt, you need this to be not a basement stitch, it's a regular stitch. It's also a good idea to pull underneath because sometimes the bodice has a tendency to fold and you'll wind up with a pleat and you don't want that. So keep tabs on everything that's going on top and on the bottom so that you don't wind up with any kind of a pleat or a gap that you missed the seam entirely. The truth is, if you pinned it a lot, the tendency of you doing that is not so great because it's been pinned the right way. This is the most tedious part of this dress. That's on the seam, yep. It was folded underneath, the bodice was folded, so I'm glad I thought to look. Let me see if I can get this close up. You can see the seam. Try to keep my hands out of here. Yeah. And you will have to adjust the whole dress because, again, you want to check to make sure you're not making any tucks on the underneath side. Top is equally gathered and nicely distributed as you're sewing. Now, and if you place your sashes in the right spot, sewing this will not, you will not grab your sashes so that they're not no longer free to tie. You must do that. You have notches on the side, on the back, where these sashes go. The armhole, it's a half an inch down, and the bottom is a half an inch up. You want to place it in the center of those two notches. It's a large seam, but we're almost at the end. Now I'm on the side where the placket has been turned down. I know there's a lot of fabric here. It's hard to see everything. I'm going to try. When you get to that placket here that's been turned down, I'm going to back tack it. Okay, we're seam has been stitched. My pins are out. Now for me, because we have two gathering stitches, we have one that's a quarter of an inch and one that's a half an inch. I'm going to pull the half an inch seam out because technically, I mean the stitch, technically, let me get the dress right side out so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so that's what the dress looks like. Let me get this a bigger view. So we can see. Oops, not the floor. Now, if you can see, top joined to the bottom, I see my gathering stitch, and that's the reason why I'm going to pull mine out. We no longer need it, and we surely don't want it to show on the outside of the dress. So it's only the stitch that goes past the seam allowance. And if you've pulled it only in one direction, it's going to be simple to do. Mine's coming out really easy. There are so many threads. Don't pull unless you're sure it's what you need it to be pulled. This is the quarter inch. I'm just going to cut it. Don't need to pull that out. Now, because I pulled it in the same place that I pulled it to do my gathers, I can go on the outside of the dress and I can just pull out this stitch. At this point, any threads that are left, just trim them. Because we no longer need all those gathering stitches, so it's okay to trim them. Okay, I think I might have gotten rid of all my stitches. Yeah. And that's what your dress should look like. Nice amount of gathers equally distributed. And another piece of thread. From the side seam, my side seams match. I'm going to make sure, because now, before I close this waist up, I have to make sure they match, okay? Okay. And if you can see on my bodice, there's no pleats or gathers because it was underneath of this needle and I couldn't see what I was doing, but I kept a check on it. I'm going to make sure I have no pleats or tucks anywhere. I have to eliminate them before I sew this dress closed. Once the dress is sewn closed, it's quite a bit of work to get it fixed. Okay. Now we're going to turn the dress inside out. We're going to do two things. We have that dress lining for the bodice that if you can, it's free. It's free. It's not attached to anything, and we need it to be. Oh, my seam is not pressed open, so I'm going to take the seam out and fix it. The dress will lay so much flatter if I do that. I need my ripper. Just a second. Now remember, the seam for the skirt is an overlock closed, so it just goes towards the back. But my seams, you can see my seams in the bodice needs to be open because it's a raw edge, and it just makes for a better seam because it will be flatter. I'm going to just stitch that back. Making sure that I have them lined up together with the side seams. It's just a small area. Where does it go? Oh, okay. Fixed my one mistake. Yes, now it's good. All right. And that was a good thing that I had to turn this dress inside out because I got a better view of everything that I had done. Now, this is probably a little more tricky than the gathers. I get rid of all these threads because I no longer need them. Clean them up because it's so much easier for you to work when you don't have a lot of diversions. And now we're going to burrito this waist seam. It's terminology that they use here. And we're going to fold that seam up a half an inch. And we're going to start to place it over the stitches on the inside of the waist. And I'm going to start to pin. Let me go in the other direction. See if you can see this close up. See where I'm starting? It's exactly where that center back seam is. I'm going to fold it, and it naturally wants to fold. And we're going to place it over that, fold it up under a half an inch and place it on the stitching, the waist stitching that you just did. Again, always do it, match up side seams now. I'm going to take that half an inch, fold it under. Let me see if you could see better without this light on. Can you see better? Yeah. Fold it under, making sure that your seam allowance is flat. And we're going to put it on, match it up to the seam allowance of the skirt and pin it. At some point, there is sometimes a lot of fabric to pin, so just be careful. Okay, so now I have the entire back exposed, and I can do this much simpler because I have it pinned at the beginning and at the middle. Yeah, see, this pin doesn't go through all these layers. It's not as easy. Yeah, this needs to be done across the entire waist seam. It's a little tedious, like I said. And that is what it's going to look like on the inside of my dress. I've pinned it. It's a nice, neat finish. You can do it two ways. If you prefer to do this by hand, you can do the entire waist by hand. If not, you've pinned it so that hopefully this covers that stitch that you made. So I'm just going to do one section of the skirt just to give you a heads up. On the right side of the skirt, now you're going to stitch in the ditch. That means between the seam, where the seam ends, and the skirt. And we're going to go right in there, and we're going to stitch it down. Making sure that you back tap. Go slowly, because you want to make sure that you get it exactly right. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to flip this to make sure that I've caught Okay, so far so good. I'm only gonna do one section, and then you can do it the rest of the way. I just want to show you. I'm gonna do a small portion. Break the thread, but that's okay. And if you can see on the inside of my dress, it's going to be hard to see because I use white thread on white fabric, but I have a very stitch on the very edge of this lining of the dress here. And I'll show you what it should look like on the right side. It's a completely finished seam. Making sure that always when you come to the center back that you have the one placket folded under, the one placket flattened out, and that's how the dress will close. Now, if you choose to do that by hand, that's your option. But of course, by machine is so much easier. And this is a toddler dress. Now, I make children's clothes for a living, so I know that these kids, they don't sit still. They're on the move constantly. Sometimes hand stitching is not their friend because they rip the dress apart. So a machine stitch would actually be a good thing. Now, the other thing, that's the only thing that's left for this dress to do is to do the hem. Now, right now, the way it's been set up for the project, it's a 2-inch hem that's been overlocked, or if you don't want to overlock it, you could turn the edge in and stitch the edge, and you do a pick stitch for the whole hem. I'm not going to sit here and show you how to pick stitch it because you should know how to do that. But so far, this is as far as we are going with the dress today. I'm going to post this video. If there's any questions, I would love to hear from you. And then I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to finish my waist of the dress and I'm going to see the students that are here in class. And then I'm going to show you how to do, because like I said, I'm working on binders and I'm very disappointed at some of the things that I see. And I noticed that a lot of students have had some trouble with these circular hems. So I'm going to demo this as another video once I sign out on this. So are there any questions so far for you guys that are online? Anybody? How far have you come on your dresses? Anybody?
No question.
Is that you, Cece?
Yes, it's me.
Okay, no questions. You're okay with everything?
I'm okay.
Were you able to get the videos?
Yeah, yes, I got it.
Okay, very good, very good. But at any point, because like I said, my email, it's a very challenging way to work. It would be so much better if you could physically be here to see what I'm doing, but you can't. I need you always, always, always to reach out to me because I can't read your mind, basically. And I'm always here to help you. So do not hesitate to ask me any questions, whether it's when we're on Zoom, whether it's an email, anytime. I don't care. Just reach out to me because I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Okay?
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today's operations. I would like you to start working on them. And in a short amount of time, I will do these circular hems. And at that point, after you've worked on your dress for a short amount of time, if you have any questions, that would be the best time to bring them up. Is everybody okay with that? Everybody? Okay, Danielle, you're good, Danielle? Terrence, you're good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Sam? Are we good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get Danielle, did I? Danielle. Danielle, you're good. Any questions? Danielle?
Her mic isn't working.
Oh, okay. Does she have any questions? All right, how about Emily? Are you good, Emily?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Lila? Lila? How about Lila? Yes? Any questions, Lila? Can you hear me? Lila? Okay, and CC, you definitely, you don't have any questions. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to stop the video for a little
Hello.
bit, and then we're going to continue with those sewing samples. That would be a good time to bring up any questions that you have with either the dress, regarding the dress, or any of your sewing samples. Okay,
Ew.
stop recording.